Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. At the just concluded 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced the stepping up support for other developing countries in promoting green and low-carbon energy and ruled out building new coal-fired power projects abroad, another practical step after pledging to peak carbon emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. While there are discussions on new power regulations in China, residents in northeastern part of the country have suffered recently power cuts as an electricity shortage, which initially hit factories, spread to homes. Brownouts are widening amid rising coal prices and a push to enforce environmental regulations. The power crunch has also affected more than a dozen provinces and cities across China. Could new environmental regulations seriously affect the power supply in China? And is China's story alone, or rather, also you see similar stories elsewhere in the world? For answers, let's loop in our panelists. For the story about China power shortage and carbon goals, joining us in Boston, Michael MEHLING, Deputy Director of the Center for Energy and Environmental Policy Research with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In Beijing, Ma Jun, Director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, founder of the Blue Map app. And also in Beijing, JIANYU, Executive Director of BRI Green Development Institute. Gentlemen, what a pleasure to see all of you. Well, Mr. Ma, we haven't seen power shortage in Beijing yet, but in the Rust Belt of China, northeastern part of the country, that seems to be a mounting question. Tell me more about why it happened.
You know, with the slowing down of the economy and then the pandemic hit local government or try to again resort to highly energy and energy-intensive industries like you know, the real estate and all behind that, all this steel manufacturing, cement and chemical and petrochemical. But in the meantime, coal supply situation have not been very much improved. We have seen the price of coal soaring in an amazing way. You know, from just slightly more than 500 yuan to now over 1,600 yuan per ton.
Mr. Zhang, I want to go to you also about that.
I think the current challenge comes mostly from two parts. The first part is, amazingly, lots of people do not know that renewable energies, particularly wind, has accounted for a very large portion of the energy supply, particularly the power supply in the Northeast. By today, wind accounts for about 18% of the total power generation capacity in the Northeast. And because we have been having a long extended rainy days, so the wind power has only been able to generate about 10% of what it's supposed to be. The other part is the supply of the coal, which is get significantly cut down. Also, it's a good challenge, right? Because it is because the whole country is moving to low carbon. And there have been many close downs of the coal mines for both safety and also environmental reasons. And also what we call the out of the table, out of the national statistic coal supply has been dramatically shut down. So because of these two challenges, both of the shortage of the wind supply from the renewables, and also because of the cut down of the coal supply and a double crunch, squeeze in terms of this not actually so significant gap between supply and demand, and that's where we are what we are seeing right now.
There has been a lot of administrative measures being used in terms of cutting the coal-powered energy station, and also in terms of cutting back using coal as the energy source. But whether that is being done in the right measure, with the right pace, in the right direction, some say that is questionable. Your take?
We have to seriously, restructure not just the restructure our energy mix, but restructure our industrial structure. To think about we can continue to expand all these energy intensive industries. We're producing 60% of the global iron and steel. We're producing much of the global aluminum, all be attracted to China.
Yeah.
And these are power gasoline industries, chemical and petrochemical. Think about that, Tianwei. We have to make it far more efficient.
I think about that, Mr. Ma. I also think about the jobs. And I also think about how long it would take for this transition to happen, and whether the country could be able to afford that at the time of the pandemic, when you have quite difficult situation. I think we think about one side, we also need to think about the other side. That is the point, isn't it, Mr. Zhang? Let me have your input here too.
On the economic side, I think people need to think more seriously about demand side management. I think that you cannot just put a straight face saying that I want to use electricity to the maximum of my need. Is it really necessary? Is it really necessary for you to keep your air conditioning on all the time? Is it really necessary for people to have to work during the day and not work at night so as to have different shifts to even out the power demand? I think that's one side that needs to consider. On the other side, the environmentalists also need to think about, we're still in the transition. Clearly, both the case in the UK, the shutdown of the grid back to 2019, and also we're facing right now in China, is a good challenge, right? It put us in a new situation of, if we're going to have a larger, increasingly larger portion of supply from renewables, wind, solar, what I'm going to deal with the rainy days that we're dealing with right now. So is it really necessary, critical for us to shut down all the coal-fired power plants so that we're not going to have enough base load to have this kind of a great damage to people's life? I think just both sides need to think about this issue facing this new challenge, but I still think we have the solution.
It's not just China, but the electricity price in Europe, for example, in North America, we have seen quite some growth, particularly in Europe. The growth of more than 150% in some of the countries. So how do you see this global energy transition? Too fast? Too abrupt?
Well, I would first maybe observe, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that we have had energy crises in the past long before climate policy was an issue. Think of the 1970s. So a lot of it is, of course, innate to the energy system. The hydrocarbons, in a pandemic, for instance, production ceases, goes down. And then when the economy revamps, it takes time to ramp up the production again. So some of this is really not, you cannot blame it all on climate policy and the transition. That said, there's no question that shifting to renewables, which are variable by nature, which are not as predictable, are not baseload in many cases, does increase risks. And I think resilience and, well, of course, balancing of variable or intermittent sources are challenges in every jurisdiction, whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, they are challenges. And we have to deal with that. But I think that the irony is that in the short term, this will be difficult. We have to talk about better grid interconnection, better transmission, better storage infrastructure. All these things are challenges. In the long run, though, once we get to a stable decarbonized electricity system, we actually become more independent of fuel prices, for instance. The price of coal, the price of gas, that will no longer be an issue because wind and sun are free. So it's really sort of this transition period that's the difficult one that we have to get through.
And I'm very interested in this transitional period. That this is where the fascinating things are happening. We have to use innovation, of course, technology advancement, that's for sure. But what about building a system and understanding there is a rational approach toward the goals, rather than let's just make a decision and let's just get there. And things doesn't work that way. So, Mr. MEHLING, maybe you can also provide to us the case study in the United States.
So I think from what I understand, the curtailment and the supply shortages that you're facing in China are very much due to the economics and the physics of the grid. The blackout that we had in Texas and in parts of the south of the US this past winter, which were very dramatic and caused huge economic damage, and also, of course, influenced politics, influenced how the public perceives energy system, the importance of the energy system, of energy prices, and of resilience of the energy system. That was very much due to weather, but many say that it was due to changes that are exacerbated by climate, the polar vortex that has drawn very cold temperatures so far south in the United States, where they normally are not expected and where the physical infrastructure is not prepared, is not resilient to such temperatures. So in a way, ironically, again, it's the climate change that has caused some of these problems. And the politics is very complex. Some immediately wanted to blame it on wind. It turns out that it was also and primarily fossil fuels, so natural gas infrastructure, where the infrastructure just froze up and couldn't supply anymore. And prices skyrocketed to levels that were absolutely beyond the pale, really. I mean, some households faced costs for 1 day of electricity use of $10,000 or more. So it shows sort of the real challenges, the real economic challenges, and the social challenges, and the political challenges that can come in this transition.
Right. So now, gentlemen, it seems that we all agree there has to be a balance that needs to be kept about how to make sure there's sustainable supply of electricity, for example, for ordinary people's lives. Their quality of life would not be changed as a result of the abrupt change of the supply possibilities. On the other hand, of course, the goals for China 2030, 2060 needs to be kept also for the rest of the world as well when it comes to climate change commitment. But how? That how is becoming very crucial. And that how probably is the thing that we need to work on today. So, Mr. Ma, tell me about your version of the how.
In the northeastern part, the local government also mentioned that some of the cities would not actually, really seriously implement that policy, like in the southeastern part of China. So that's why they push themselves to this extreme kind of power shortage, power outage. And then to the people, what about electricity price? The reason for all this power companies, coal power pump companies, to have no incentives to expand their supply is because now they're suffering from massive losses, enormous losses because of the rising cost of the coal. But in the meantime, the power price cannot go up. And in the meantime, the business also, they want to behave responsibly. They need to reinstall all this, their own solar panels and their own kind of renewables as much as possible.
But have you ever counted as to how much that will be able to make up for the loss, quote unquote, of coal-powered electricity? Do we know? Or this is just a suggestion, a goodwill suggestion? For
aluminum, for those, some of the petrochemical companies, obviously this is not enough. But for some of the lighter industries, this can make up quite some proportion and can keep themselves going.
Mr. Zhang, your version of how?
On a normal situation, and I would welcome Michael's comment. For example, in the US, will be hard to do, but luckily we're here in China. We have a really strong central government that can do that, and we have a really strong, technically capable, both China grade, state grade, and also southern grade. I think they should really be fully mobilized to overcome the inherent barriers that has been buried in the system that cannot be overcome in a normal circumstance. But they should really do and should really try some of the extreme measures to make sure the power supply and its entire country is balanced.
Michael, your version of how?
Well, the first thing I'll say is it won't be easy. I think that on the one hand, climate science tells us we have to move really, really fast. But then we have all these other wishes. We want to get rid of nuclear in parts of Europe, for instance. Even in the US, there's a debate. Natural gas has become something that we're trying to phase out. We may have to rethink the pace and also the sequence in which we do that. And we may have to revisit the design, say, of electricity markets in order to ensure that we may not use natural gas or coal all the time, but we still keep some capacity to balance variable renewables during this transition phase. All in all, though, I think, in the end, it will come down to just redoubling our efforts, investing in innovation, investing in transmission infrastructure, in interconnection, in storage, all those things. And those will be expensive. And the price will be paid, whether it's by taxpayers, ratepayers, somebody pays it. So it's not going to be easy. I think it's important not to be, let's say, green-eyed about that.
I do not disagree with any of your comment, because we all know the goals are extremely important for all of us to be committed to. But at the same time, how we can start off from here till reaching there is a crucial process that we need to use a lot of wisdom. Thank you so much for your contribution. Ma Jun, Michael MEHLING, last but not least, Zhang JIANYU. Really appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you.